Okay, in this video we are going to test the Lich that we just created. So let's start with his first power, which is an at-will. It's Shadow Ray, and there it fires off at poor Vani because he's the only one to attack, and damages him, yes. And by the way, I've made him 500 hit points just so we can use him as a punching bag. And there it is in the chat, so that looks good. A hit, and we see that it did its necrotic damage. Moving along to the next one, that's actually a zone that will be cast, Frostburn it's called. So what happens is, the MPB knows that, and it generates a separate token. It does that by copying the caster token, the initiating one. So as you can see, we have two tokens now. One's called Frostburn. You might want to change the image of this so your players don't freak out because they're being attacked by two liches. That's not what's happening here. So that's the actual spell token that's going to represent. So the way we deploy that is we move the A-boss to where we want the center of the spell to be, where it's going to be moved to. Then we just run the power, which is under encounter because that's what recharges are represented as. So we'll say okay to that. And the attack, the initial attack goes off, and that's the 2-hit. There's the damage, and there we see it in the chat. And that describes everything about the daily spell that's just been put out there. So it's going to stay there, and it's going to attack anybody who comes within range. And we had to do that manually because we can't put an aura on it because the Lich already has an aura, which is sort of on the library token here, which is the same token this guy's using. You can't have two auras on one library token. The framework doesn't work that way. So let's just do it manually. Let's create a manual power here. We'll go into import PC power, and we'll say cancel because we're doing this manually. As it says manual mode there, we'll call this Frostburn attack. And that looks good. Let's ignore the keywords. We'll do this as a close burst too, so we'll change both these to 2. Attack bonus 51 because we know it's going to hit for sure. Damage is 10. Let's get the keywords from the PDF like we did in the last video, because we need to specify the type of damage. So we drag and drop into the damage type list there. And let's also get the hit text. I know my players like descriptions of what's going on. So that looks good. All that's filled out properly. And let's go to the next page. It's an attack. Let's change that. At will, sure. It's a no action because an action doesn't have to be spent. And this is a close burst. 1 creature. That should be fine. So we say okay. It creates the power. Now it puts it on the same library token as we discussed. So what we should be able to do is to go into the free no. We can do this anytime we want. And if a token starts its turn within 2, we can run this Frostburn attack. Let's do that. And it automatically comes up with the damage because we know it's going to hit. We put that 51 in, remember? So it does it, and it shows cold and necrotic damage. Good. Well, he probably doesn't think it's so good, but it's working properly. Now, something else we have to do is we have to actually tell the framework that it's a spell. So we're going to use this convert to spell macro from Frankenstein's lab. See how it generates these 3 buttons here? The most important is sustain. You have to click this every turn you want that spell to stay out there. If you forget, the MPB is going to assume at the end of your next turn that you don't want it. And it's going to take it off the battlefield and put it back to your library token. And you'll lose it, at least for that encounter, until it recharges. So that's that. And the next power is indestructible. We don't need to go into that because that's just a description of when the guy dies, when somebody finds his phylactery. Hopefully that'd be bad for him if they did that. And second wind, you know what, let's try this real quick. We'll simulate this by, let's say the guy got damaged. So we'll go adjust HP. Let's give him 100 points of damage. Untyped, sure. In the chat, it shows that he got damaged. Now, since he only has the second one left, it's not going to ask us what power we want to run. It'll do it automatically, and yes, it did. Minus 54 to current HP. It did some healing on him, and there are the second wind defense bonuses that you see. And that looks good, and he's got the state on him. And you see the stat sheet? All his defenses are elevated. We're ready to rock and roll with this guy. He's ready for the battlefield. So watch out, players. See you in the next video.